Call the meeting to order. Let's begin with our Utilities Commission meeting. The first order of business is to approve the minutes of the Utilities Commission meeting of January 20th, 2015.
I'll move that the minutes be approved as submitted.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Let the record show that the minutes were unanimously approved. The second order of business is to report the cash on hand and in the banks for the Utilities Commission. The total cash on hand comes to $923,055.76. In our capital funds for water and sewer hookup, we have a total of $223,400. Our third order of business under Utilities Commission is the payment of the bills.
I'll move the bills be paid as submitted.
A second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Let the record show that we unanimously paid the bills for the Utilities Commission. Which brings us to item number 4, Mr. Bob Sykes.
Hello, Mayor and Council. In the last 2 days, because of the cold snap, we've had 9 to 10 calls about frozen pipes, no water in the house. We help as much as we can with those. Sometimes it's just the meter. But sometimes people have the vents open in the bottom of the house, or the meter lid is damaged. Under those conditions, when it gets this cold, a broken lid should be reported right away. While that is a homeowner responsibility, we keep those in stock, and we can replace those within an hour of getting that call, and that will keep your meter from freezing. If it's a matter of just pulling out the meter and putting in a new one, we do that, or replacing a freeze plate. And for what's happened in the last 2 days, we haven't built any of that. We're just doing what we can to keep everybody's water flowing. But you want to take a look around the house and think about your neighbors. If you have any neighbors that are seasonal or may not be home, they may have turned off the heat when they left. Give them a call and make them aware of how cold it is here, especially if they're down in Florida. They might not realize that. An ounce of prevention in this case is worth 10 pounds of cure, because once those pipes freeze and bust, it gets very expensive. On Sheila Road, our grease trap ordinance has been in place now since January. Everyone's required to have grease traps. We're still dealing with residual grease issues on Sheila Road. From PNC Bank back to the side entrance of Acme. Is that Sheila or Schauber? Sheila. So right where the freeze is at, along that stretch going back towards the hospital, the mental health hospital. We've been down there for the last 2 weeks, trying to get the line clean. We even called in a larger jetter from Roto-Rooter, who has the largest jetter on the eastern shore, to try to get it cleaned out. We think we have it. We tried to put the camera down the line, and we still saw a lot of grease, so we were jetting it even more. We haven't done it in the last 2 days because we've been very busy with frozen pipes and trying to keep everything else up. So if you see us up there on 213, that's what we're doing. We ordered a supply of phosphate. You'll see that in the bills. It was a little over $4,000. That usually lasts us for about 10 months. And we got the report back discussing the pilot test at Chester River Hospital on the ground contamination, the heating fuel that leaked into the ground some 27 years ago. We gave copies of that to the Kent News and anyone else who was interested in it, including our geologist and our attorney. After they reviewed it, we had a meeting, me, the geologist, the attorney, and Bill, to discuss the report. And it appears to be a lot of smoke and mirrors. When it was turned over to us, the way that it was described was 18,000% improvement in removal but they also explained to us how they got the 18,000%, is they cherry-picked the numbers to get that. So in all the pilot tests, during their withdrawals, when they were testing for the hydrocarbons, they took their best sample over that 1 week period and used it as their success number. And then they took the lowest historical number to compare that with. So the lowest historical number was 0.1, and they came back with 350 as their highest number. That's where they did their calculations. Now, nothing about that seems representative to me of how the pilot test went, but that's an example of what we're trying to weed through in deciphering the pilot test report. 90% of it is interpretation. So they did what they said they did mainly what they said they were going to do. But not everything they did was what they told us. What they told us they were going to do is add 5 gallons of Ivysol to 275 gallons of water and put it in the well. Well, sometimes they decided to add 10 gallons of Ivysol and double the dosage, but never notified anybody. Originally, it was supposed to be a 3 to 4 day process, and it turned into a 1 week process. So the controls on that are pretty loose. I don't know if they went back to MDE and got approval from MDE's representatives that were on site. But what they did not follow what was supposed to happen for the pilot study. Also, they represent in the pilot study report that the pilot study was done to see if the Ivysol was effective and to see if the push-pull method is effective. And that was never my understanding. My understanding was that they were going to use that method to see if the Ivysol was effective, not to see if the push-pull method was effective. The push-pull was the most convenient way to introduce the Ivysol into the wells. So that's also misrepresented in the report, because they're calling it a report, they're calling it a success for Ivysol and for the push-pull method. They also state in the report that they exceeded all of their expectations. We asked them before the pilot study began and while it was being formulated what the expectations were, and they had none. So it's very easy to exceed your expectations if you don't have any. But that's what we're reading through. I'm trying to find something in there that's good, and I'm not seeing it. 350 milligrams per liter removed on one sample. If that's the best they got, it's not telling us what they got over the total length of the pilot study test. We still have to sort through 1,200 pages of lab results to get that number. Also, in the report, they're saying that by putting 280 gallons of liquid into one of the wells, that it raised the groundwater elevation on the outside of the well 5 to 10 feet. That's an impossibility, physically impossible, because the volume that occupies will not raise it up 5 feet. You're not going to raise up in a cone on the outside on the aquifer. That aquifer is similar to a river in that it has a level. When you inject something into it or let water flow down in a column 300 gallons, you're not going to displace 25,000 gallons of water to make it mound up 5 to 10 feet. That's not possible. So we're still going through it. They also state in the report quite a few times the nearly non-existent product left in the ground up there. but it's still showing up on test after test. What they want to do in the future is they do not want to test for gasoline range organics. Gasoline range organics are what we've been getting detects on up at the hospital site. Those include benzenes, xylenes, and things that we're required to test for as part of the Safe Drinking Water Act. So we would certainly be opposed to them not testing for those items that we have to test for at the water plant. Their plan now that was submitted at the same time as the pilot study report, they submitted a plan to move forward to MDE in the same packet. That plan includes using the monitoring wells and recovery wells at the hospital in the same way they did these 4 wells in August. They want to use the Ivy-Sol in the monitoring wells in this push-pull method. The problem with that is what they're actually doing isn't cleaning the site, it's cleaning the surrounding soils of the monitoring wells and making them not representative of the groundwater itself. Imagine you have a sponge, and that sponge is the dirt around those wells. You put the Ivy-Sol down there and you clean the sponge. It's now free to absorb more contamination. If they make it 12 months, not getting a bad sample, they get to close the project out and walk away forever. That seems to be the goal. The goal is not site cleanup. The goal is get 12 months of good samples so we can walk away. That's the only reason I can think of for using those monitoring wells in that push-pull method, because you're not cleaning the entire site. Their own numbers don't show that they clean the site. And their numbers are remarkable on how far that 300 gallons of solution goes when they put it down a well. They would lead you to believe in their report that 280 gallons is cleaning approximately 100-foot radius in the groundwater. The problem with that is physically that 300 gallons doesn't even occupy a 15-foot radius. Best case scenario, does not occupy a 15-foot radius. So we're getting a lot of smoke and mirrors. The geologist and the attorney are working on notes so we can be prepared when we have our next meeting. But there are a lot of things to address, and in the report, a lot of things that need to be explained.
I have a question for you. What should we do? Because the thing that's challenging for me is you're kind of speaking a foreign language a lot of times to me, and it doesn't sound like you're very happy with the pilot test. Is there anything, like, what should the hospital do to remediate this site?
What we have, before the hospital was purchased, this push wasn't on. The hospital got new owners, and all of a sudden there's a push to close this out. I am in favor of getting this closed out, but only in a complete site cleanup scenario. I went to Ivy-Sol's website. Their methodology for doing this is not this push-pull method. It was never even mentioned on their website until we heard about it up at the hospital. And I think there's a reason for that. Because it's not effective at doing the entire site. It is effective at cleaning the individual well and the surrounding soils immediately adjacent. I think what we need to push for, number one, is honesty in these reports. Interpretation is one thing, but misleading and cherry picking your numbers, there's nothing scientific about that, and there's nothing honest about that. So they need to be above board with us. From day one, the goal as I see it, from the hospital's point, is to close this out, not protection of the town's water. That's the only thing that explains them proceeding without notifying the town for the first year. They tried to get this done before we even knew about it. Everything since then has been focused towards well cleanup, not site cleanup. They tell you that there is a smear zone up at the hospital site that is approximately 150 feet by 100 feet. Those wells do not encompass that entire area. If they were trying to do an entire site cleanup, the first thing that needs to be done is a site characterization plan, which is, my understanding, SOP for MDE on a cleanup site. The first thing they do is they fully characterize the site, and they know exactly where the contamination starts and stops and where it's going to. That hasn't been done here. I think that needs to be done. And then they need to start talking about entire site cleanup instead of well cleanup. If they do the well cleanup, the monitoring wells with this push-pull method, we don't have anything to test anymore.
Yeah.
Because all of those sample sites have been compromised. They have artificially changed the sample results by cleaning the soils around those so that they're not representative of the rest of the groundwater in that area.
Can we hold back some strategic monitoring wells from the process?
Well, my concern is this. Once you use the Ivy-Sol process to clean a monitoring well, that it is no longer a monitoring well.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. Can we stop them using all of them?
Well, even if we stop them from using half of them, then we have no gauge on the area around that monitoring well on what's happening. So the monitoring system that was put in up there was put in to monitor the entire site based on the best information that they had at the time. But when you start eliminating those monitoring, they've been adding them over the years. Now we're going to talk about eliminating those monitoring wells in the most contaminated areas. So if you go into the heavily contaminated, where they get the highest sample results, and you clean that sponge,
Yeah. I understand.
if you make it a year before the sponge gets saturated again, they get to walk away.
Can we add more monitoring
Right,
wells?
my question.
I think that is an option.
Yeah.
I think if they want to use a monitoring well, then we need another gauge for determining whether or not site cleanup is happening or well cleanup is happening. Now, on the Ivy-Sol website, what they show is they do horizontal drilling. They put a horizontal header with holes in it. They put the Ivy-Sol into that header, and it has to drip down through all the soils to the groundwater table. And then they pull it to a central location that is in the aquifer downstream, so that you're not cleaning up an individual 10-foot section, you're cleaning up a strip. And then you move down whatever amount of feet and you do it again. But the first step, I really believe, is to get a complete site characterization plan that, other than this site, I believe, is standard.
I think what we should do, Bob, is you and our geologist and a lawyer should basically look at the report and come up with a one-sheet list of bulleted points that we would like to see
Yep.
done differently, because
We're doing a list of 6 to 10.
that would be great.
6 to 10 items. The problem is, it makes me nervous. We know that the site is contaminated. And if you take the radius that we think Ivy-Sol works and the radius that they say Ivy-Sol works, we're talking about two different animals.
Right.
What they're considering cleanup isn't what we consider cleanup.
It's almost an order of magnitude.
It's an order of magnitude by,
Well, you're going from 15 to 100.
yeah, and the further out you go, the magnitude changes because you're talking a radius.
So have you had any feedback at all from MDE?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Nothing.
I think
We're,
Don't they have an obligation to come back to us? I mean,
yeah, they do, they're going to.
well, it's about
They're
time.
they're still looking at the report, is my
Who
understanding.
So-
gives permission to use the new, the wells as, the monitoring wells, switching them over to?
MDE. It would have to be approved by MDE. What's existing up there right now is they're under consent order with MDE to do that cleanup. Everything related to that cleanup has to go through MDE. Whether, if they want to clean a well, if they want to take one out of service, put in a new one, do a anything like that, has to go through MDE.
Have
Is
you gotten
MD
any idea of how they feel about this report?
We're still waiting to hear back from MDE. When we got the report, it was a little more than 2 weeks ago. So we're expecting to hear from MDE any day now. We were told MDE wanted to review it for some amount of time. And given the volume in the lab results and in the report itself, and then in their continuing plan to proceed, it may take 4 weeks.
Does MDE have an obligation to keep us in the loop?
The hospital, I signed a letter with Ken Kazell of the hospital requesting a public meeting with MDE. So yes, they will.
After this report?
After the MDE looks through the report.
And how about this 1,200 pages of data? Has anybody other, I mean, you've looked at some of it and you've picked out that they were cherry picking, as I
No.
said, the data, but somebody might need to do some statistical analysis. It seems to me the better approach would be to take the average of all the samples, you know, before and after, and come up with your percent of improvement.
At least get the mean. if
The
nothing else.
statistical
I would think that would be
method needs
MDE's
to be
job.
much more
Yes,
honest.
but the 1,200 pages of lab results, I have not seen.
Oh,
He told us when he gave us the report that that's what they did. That they cherry
Who
picked
he?
that with Dane Bauer.
oh,
That they picked that 350 milligrams per liter number that they used was the highest number during all of the sampling.
he admitted that?
Yes. So that's where they got 18,000%. But something else on this is there's a fundamental disagreement on how much oil is left in the ground up there. I'm using estimates at the time that the spill occurred. The estimates were 150,000 gallons. The hospital says they cleaned up 87,000 gallons. EPA literature says that on a pump and treat system, you have done an excellent job with it if you remove 50% of what's in the ground. So given that report, there is still in excess of 50,000 gallons in the ground. Removing that at 350 milligrams per liter is going to take a whole lot of pushing and pulling. So again, I think there needs to be a discussion on, is this site cleanup or is this sample well cleanup to achieve a better sample result, even though you haven't effectively remediated the spill. So the contamination remains in a large percentage of the site, but you've cleaned your sponges, and if you make it that year, you don't have to deal with it anymore. That's the issue.
Is there any way to get that year extended to a longer period of time so that?
I think that needs to be part of the discussion, even if they change the methods. We need more assurance than it made it 12 months, because they just made it 10 months. Two
Yeah.
more months and they would have walked away last year, in April, until they got to detect. And what they mean by detect and what we mean by detect, again, semantics, but if there's any number, that's a detect to me. But that's not what they're using. They actually showed up with 4 inches of oil in a monitoring well, is what made them fire it back up.
So when does the clock start ticking on the 12 months?
When the remediation plan has been completed. So if their remediation plan lasts for 4 months, it's at the end of that 4 months, they initiate the sampling program.
But the remediation plan hasn't even been looked at yet. I mean,
It's being looked at right now by
Right.
MDE. We have a copy of it. The Kent News has a copy of it. Anybody that does want a copy
I'd
of
like a
it
copy.
can get a copy of it.
You have it electronically, right?
I'd like to kind of wrap
Yes.
this up, because I feel like this could be a whole separate meeting, really, where we could talk for hours and hours about this, but I think, to sum it up, their interpretation of the results and ours are very different. You're not comfortable, so I'm not comfortable, and we have a lot of work to do to come back together on a plan forward.
Yes.
So I think in the short run, it would be great if you would work with our geologist and the lawyer to come up with that bulleted list of the shortcomings that we see and what we'd like to see done. And then when MDE gets involved, you know, obviously, we're gonna have a lot of work to do to make it
Yes.
right.
So, yeah, I didn't mean to take up that much time, but I wanted to give you a good idea of where we're at on this report and what I see as fallacies in it. But yes, the geologist and the attorney have it in hand. They're gonna put together a list of 6 to 10 bullets on it, on the proposed plan and on the past pilot study. And send it to me and Bill, and we'll review it, make any changes, or add. If we can't keep it to 10, then we can't keep it, but we don't want it to grow too big.
Got it.
And that is all I have.
That's all you have?
Yes.
Not much.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. I would move to adjourn. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Yeah, I'll make a motion, we adjourn the utility.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we are unanimously adjourned from the Utilities Commission meeting.
Thanks.
I am now going to begin the mayor and council meeting. Let the record show that it's 7:55. Our first order of business is to approve the minutes of the mayor and council meeting of February 2nd, 2015, and the public hearing of February 9th, 2015.
I move we accept both of those sets of minutes. I'd like to say how excellent they were this time.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I need my report. This is the police. Does anybody have a cash on hand?
Yes, here.
I got it.
For mayor and council.
You get it?
That's it.
Cash on hand and in the banks. Our total cash on hand for unrestricted use is $1,827,988.92. We also have a Washington College donation, which the balance now sits at $196,740, for a total in our funds of $2,024,728.92. The next order of business on the mayor and council meeting, thank you, Liz, is the payment of the bills.
I move the bills be paid as submitted.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Let the record show that we unanimously agree to pay our bills.
I'd like to commend Beth for the new format for the presentation.
All right,
I'll let her know.
should be exciting. Which brings us to the highlight of the whole night, really. The Garnett Elementary School Reading Challenge winners. And I see there might be some kids from Garnett Elementary School, is that correct? So Linda Kuiper, are you gonna take it away for us here?
Yes. Okay, who do we have here tonight? We have second grade winner? Mariah? Mariah. And, Suzanne here from the third grade. Graydon?
Oh, thank you.
Hold your applause to the
Oh, there you
one
go.
out
I was hoping you-
And Alex here. So, here, you want to turn around so we can see the, do you know you're on TV?
This is big.
And let's face these people over here. So you want to come over here? You want to back up a little bit? Okay. Now, this year was a little bit different in the reading contest because it was between the students and the staff. And this is the Henry Highland Garnett Elementary School staff versus students reading counts challenge. Right? And I want you to say loud and proud your name and how many words you read. So look into the camera and tell everybody your name. Say it loud and proud. What is your name?
My name is Mariah Andrade, and I read 32,119 words.
And what grade are you in?
Second grade.
Okay. And is it Aaron is in here?
Right.
Aaron is in the third grade, and I volunteer in third grade. And if you walk into Miss Terrell's third grade class, you can find Aaron sitting in a beanbag chair in the corner, and you don't usually see his face because the book is in front of his face. And Aaron read 821,421 words.
Wow.
He counted them all.
Magnificent.
Who counted all those? That's a lot of words to count.
Well, they take a quiz.
Got like a calculator? Kind
They-
of formula?
It's in the, Apple. What is
Right,
it?
it's
Oh,
a Scholastic program.
Right.
And so they take a quiz, and if they pass the quiz, then they get credit for the number of words in that
Ah,
And in
Got it.
third grade, we're on a roll because.
Steve Jobs counted them all.
100% on all the quizzes.
wow.
Loud and proud, your name and how many words you read.
My name is Braden Beethoven, and I read 510,805 words.
Wow.
Loud and proud.
My name is Alistair McKenzie, and I read 635,570 words.
Wow, you guys, that's like 2 million words.
I did a little research, and according to the 2014 census, Chestertown has 5,252 residents in the town of Chestertown. And if we divided up and gave each person in Chestertown 1,096 and a half words, we would have some words left over to give to visitors who come to Chestertown. So maybe we could do a little promotion on our website with the reading program in our elementary school and invite people to come to Chestertown, and we'll give you a word. And I also want to introduce Mrs. Carroll, who is the 2014
No
Teacher of the
X-rated
Year.
words.
So Linda.
Mrs. Crowdy.
How many words did the staff read?
And the parents of these proud children, the proud parents. And here is a gift certificate for Mariah, and for Braden, and for Alistair. I'm so proud of all of you, and I'm proud to be part of the reading program at Garnett Elementary School. And I invite other people to volunteer for the reading program. It's very, very rewarding.
Sure.
Hey, Linda,
Okay?
can these guys come up and maybe shake our hands, and I have a patch
Sure.
to give these guys if they
Sure,
come
would you
in?
like to?
How many words
Step
did
up.
the staff read? That's what I want to
Oh,
know.
I'm sorry, Alistair. You-
Congratulations,
You tell
Mariah.
the rest of the story. Between the staff and the students, who won the reading challenge? Fifth grade. Fifth grade won the reading challenge. So, welcome to.
Congratulations.
Good job, congratulations.
Congratulations.
Nice work. That's awesome. Patrick.
Keep reading there, Mariah.
Good job, bud. That's a lot of reading. That's more than
Actually,
what I
the
do in a
total
day.
number-
Ever, that's more than you ever have done.
The total number of words read between the students and the staff was 5,758,818 words.
Wow, awesome.
How about that?
A lot of words.
None of them was 50 Shades of Grey, not one of those. Not one of those words
Was great.
was 50 Shades of Grey, not one. Not one of those
That's
kids
4
read that
words.
book. Not the book.
All right, good job, guys. Okay, our next item on the agenda is
Cute.
a presentation by Stu Bruce from Washington College's GIS program.
Well, thank you very much for giving me time tonight to speak. I'll try to take less time than the water there.
Yeah, well, that's a big deal. Not that you're not a big deal.
So tonight I'm here to talk about geographic information systems and applications in Chestertown. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of GIS in Chestertown, and then talk about some possible future projects that we could do with the town. And I want to start off with this picture here. I'm not sure if you recognize who this person is. I'll take that, Peter, who he is.
Is it William Smith?
It's
Smith,
William
yeah.
Smith. And I found this picture actually quite recently, and I wanted to point out, in addition to the books and letters for which Washington College is very famous for, does anyone know what the instrument is on his desk?
It's a sextant.
It's an iPhone, the first iPhone.
Yeah, it's actually a theodolite.
Theodolite.
And, it's a surveying instrument. And William Smith is the founder of our college, actually taught surveying, map making, globe making, and geography at Washington College. And I'm proud that today, 2015, about 232 years later, we're continuing in the tradition of William Smith with our current team of students and staff at the Washington College GIS program, which is part of the Center for Environment Society. And I wanted to point out the growth in our GIS program in Chestertown since 2007. We now have approximately 70 employees, both staff and students. That amount of personnel in our office is adding close to $750,000 in payroll to the town of Chestertown to improve the economy. And I also wanted to point out that since we lease space in the Chestertown Business Park, we're one of the parts of Washington College that actually pays property tax to Chestertown.
That was Marty Stetson clapping.
So the first project I'm going to talk about is the canopy mapping and impervious surface project that we did with the town. This was actually done with Chesapeake Bay Trust funding, so we're very grateful to the Chesapeake Bay Trust for promoting that project. And what we did is we used aerial photography, and we went ahead and mapped the canopy cover. We also used satellite imagery. This is actually QuickBird 2 satellite imagery that we purchased with the Chesapeake Bay Trust funds to try to come up with as best of a canopy mapping that we could within the budget that we had. We then worked with the town to do a sample of the street trees to try to assist the town with coming up with a tree management plan. And some of you may remember this. Carl Gallegos was a staff member at CES who was responsible for the street survey. And we actually used volunteer students and volunteer citizens from the town to actually survey the individual streets. They used maps such as these to go and measure the tree types, canopy, the health of the trees, and used a program called iTree to come up with the overall tree inventory for the town. This resulted in a map of the town showing the overall canopy. And this is a table from the tree management plan that Carl presented to the town. And you may not know this, but sugar maples are the most prevalent species of trees in the town. So just showing you some of the data that was collected previously. We also worked on mapping impervious surface. This is a sort of a detailed map of the downtown area. Impervious surface and trees kind of go together because the tree canopy can absorb rainwater and sort of slow the speed that stormwater might enter the system. Now, one of the things that we found out later, we went on to do studies like this in the town of Easton and in the town of Cambridge, And in those towns, we also mapped the sidewalks. And what we found was that the sidewalks in Easton and Cambridge actually make up about 5% of the impervious surface. So our original study that we did in the town actually underestimated the amount of impervious surface. These are some of the numbers that we came up with. Buildings alone, about 8%. Paved surfaces, about 15%. Open space, about 53%. And back then, we believed that we had a canopy of about 24%. We do believe that number has increased for the planting of additional trees. The next thing I want to talk about is the study that we did on the historic district. We worked on this project with CASE, and this is sort of a map of the historic district. And we worked with a consultant who actually went through every single property in the historic district, did an inventory. My students actually went and took pictures, and then we took his inventory and entered that into an Access database. That data was then linked to a map, which allowed us to see the contributing and non-contributing buildings towards the historic district in the town. In addition, we did some historical work linking the properties in town to the 1920 census. So we're able to go back almost 95 years, and we can say who lived in what house. So for people that are interested in history, it's actually a very interesting database. And we did some 3D. We took probably about 80 or 90 of the historic buildings. We rendered those in 3D. And you'll see these buildings again a little bit later in another example I'm going to show you. Streetlights. This was a project that was actually done by one of my students. Some of you may know Carol Wagner. She was a staff member at GIS, but she also took my classes. And she worked on a project to map streetlights. We've already mapped every light on campus in the interest of safety of the students. And Carol took on a project to map the lights from campus all the way into town, trying to look at if there's any areas that might be a little bit too dark and potentially could benefit from additional lights. She actually mapped every single light in that area, recorded the information on utility poles. She recorded what kind of light that it was, and then ended up with this sort of buffer analysis to see how much the light actually impacts. I'd be interested in, if you guys ever want to talk about that, there are some areas where we do feel 1 or 2 additional streetlights might be helpful, not only for the safety of the students on campus, but also for the citizens of Chestertown. Next project I'm going to show you is animation. See if I can get this to work. I had a little bit of problem with the Windows 8 computer earlier, but I think I've mastered the technology. I'm a Windows 7 person, and if I can get this to pop up over here. So this is actually using the historic buildings that we did as part of the historic project, and this is an animated flyover of the waterfront. And I understand the town and of course the college are very interested in the future of the waterfront. So just showing you a little example here. We're passing by the Custom House where CES is located, coming over the marina. And our next version, I'm going to take the sails now off the sailboat. So
it's a good job.
Always a work in progress with these. And then, of course, we're showing Wilmer Park. And then we come across the college property. You can see the existing boathouse, the armory, and of course, Stepney Manor. Find my mouse here.
Is that animation, or is it a combo of animation and actual features?
Need to find. Okay. This is Windows 8 thing. All right, now I'm stuck. I apologize for this technical difficulty.
You don't
But I don't
want
want now.
You can try Alt Tab.
close it again.
Alt Tab back to the.
Alt tab.
Alt Tab.
Alt and then Tab back to your presentation.
There you go.
Okay, there we go. Thank you.
That's why you're like tech guy on council.
This is another example of a project that we did. We did this for the Sandbox project, and if I can figure out how to Alt Tab to the right thing here. Oops. Oh, I see. Let's hit Tab. There we go.
You don't want to go to
There, there's
cancel.
the mouse. I'm going to bring this over and show you. This is actually a virtual world demonstration of the waterfront area. And it allows me to basically walk through. And I'm not very good at using the keyboard thing.
Stepney Manor there on the left.
You're in Stepney, aren't you?
And we're going this way. I'm not doing very good with the mouse controls here. But basically it's a sort of
There.
virtual world that you can actually walk through the waterfront. And this is a little pilot project that we did.
Right through the walls and everything.
Right in front of
It'd work better if I had
It's a
a
boathouse.
the boathouse, yeah.
mouse. Let me get back to my presentation. All right. So next project, I want to show you just a few other examples. We had talked with Bob Sipes about mapping the water system, and this was the map. This has been a few years since I've really talked to him seriously about this. But at the time, this was really the best map we had of the water system. And we were approached by the Chestertown Fire Department. They wanted to have a really good map of hydrants. So we went ahead and we sent our students out. We actually mapped all the hydrants in Chestertown. At the time we mapped this, there were 4 hydrants that were not functioning properly. I'm not sure what the current status of those are. We also mapped hydrants outside of the town and did some other work for the fire department, which we shared in case other fire departments might have to respond to Chestertown. They have these maps in their vehicles and they can locate them, especially on a snowy when the things could possibly get covered. We've done crime maps for Chestertown. I actually don't have any of them to show. Those projects are funded by the Governor's Office of Crime Control and Prevention. We've done them in the past for the annual reports. We also make some pretty serious enterprise data systems available to law enforcement. So law enforcement can tell where criminal offenders that are under supervision live in town, juvenile offenders, sex offenders, and any open arrest warrants that might be in Chestertown. And then to end on our past projects, I thought I'd show you a couple of neat slides. This is actually a 1907 bird's eye view of Chestertown, and our students have colorized this into high resolution. We have a copy of this hanging in our office, and if anyone's interested in purchasing it, it's at the finishing touch. And then we took a 1927 aerial image of Chestertown, and again, the students colorized this. It's kind of a really neat picture, sort of hard to see on that screen, but it's very interesting. Certain parts of Chestertown look almost exactly the same as they did so many years ago. Wanted to talk about potential future projects for the town. One of the things that I think could be useful is sort of updating the tree canopy data layer. The town has planted hundreds of trees across town over the last 5 years. Of course, some of the canopy's gotten bigger, and I think that if we were to retest it, we would see an improvement and an increase in the tree canopy, which is, I think, appropriate for Tree City USA, which Chestertown is known. The second thing is, it might be useful to the town to actually have a street tree maintenance database. In the original work that we did, we just sampled some of the streets, but we didn't actually do a 100% survey of every single tree in Chestertown. This might be something that would be useful to the town. They could report the maintenance that they're doing on the trees, and then really identify where some streets could have additional trees. A third project that I'm very interested in is stormwater and impervious mapping. I would like to add the sidewalks to the impervious layer, and I'm interested in mapping the stormwater. We did a project for the city of Easton that was actually funded by the Chesapeake Bay Trust and some National Fish and Wildlife Foundation funding. And they have a current grant opening through their, we call it NIFWIF because it's really hard to say National Fish and Wildlife Foundation all the time. But Washington College GIS and CES are approved technical assistance providers, and they have a grant round out now where the town, through the college, could get $50,000 worth of funding to actually work specifically on a stormwater and impervious surface mapping project. And in that process, identify areas in town where known best management practices might be implemented. And what would happen, the net result of that would be the town would then have a blueprint that would identify projects throughout the town that could be done to reduce the flow of stormwater into the Chesapeake Bay, reduce nitrogen runoff, and then the town could use that information to apply for implementation funding from the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. But I don't think that the town right now has a comprehensive plan for all the possible projects. And it's not that the town has to do them, but it gives you a blueprint, and then you can use that blueprint to go and apply and say, we've studied the situation, maybe there's $500,000 available, and the town could prioritize which projects they might want to do when grant funding becomes available over the years. So this is actually what the town of Easton is doing. It's sort of ammunition for their grant writers to prove that this is needed for the town. That grant is actually not due until September, so there's really quite a lot of time for the town to think about it. The third project that I put down here, we're actually interested in completing the streetlight mapping project that my student Carol Wagner started. If the town has some interest, I think that would be useful information. On campus, what we're working towards is creating a web-enabled database where students, our staff, our faculty could actually notify via the web, possibly through a smartphone, when a light is out. And then that would be seen in the morning by Buildings and Grounds, and they could prioritize fixing those lights, because if you have a broken light in your existing system, again, that's creating these sort of zones of darkness, which are potential safety issues for people. I put here map the water system. I actually talked to Bob about that maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and probably haven't talked to him since, so I'm not really sure where he might be with that. But if you saw that original map that I showed you earlier, at the time, that was the best map that was available, and it's something that my staff and students at the college could do very affordably for the town. I would propose that we start off with a very inexpensive first phase, which would be to map all the surface features. So we've already mapped the hydrants, so we have part of the work done, but actually to go out and map every water valve, meter, the things that we can easily see from the surface. We have precision GPS equipment that maps to about 1 centimeter horizontal, and it's as good as anyone else could do. Plus, we're right here in town, and I pay my students well, but I don't pay them $80 an hour to do that kind of work. And then finally, I wanted to put up here this sort of idea of building virtual Chestertown. Tourism is very important to Chestertown. There are some grants out there that we can apply for through the Maryland Heritage Area Authority to actually rebuild Chestertown as it would have looked in 1920 is sort of what my plan would be. We have a lot of data already on who lived in specific houses in 1920. We have many of the buildings modeled. Just a matter of sort of putting that together, and actually the word I would use is gamify. So we gamify the town, and we can expand that throughout the entire county, so people could come to town with an iPhone and would have an app on there, and it would be a challenge for them to go around town and learn facts about the town. If they scored points, they might get coupons from local businesses to help promote commerce in the town. But not everyone can come to Chestertown at all times, so the virtual app allows them to explore Chestertown and become intrigued with the town. And then I feel that's going to compel them. Eventually, they're going to want to step out of the virtual reality and show up here in person, hopefully with wallets ready to spend with our local business people.
Looking for Gill Brothers ice cream.
But that ends my presentation, and I'd be happy to take any questions that you might have.
I have one. You were on a roll, I didn't want to interrupt you, but when you put up the fire hydrants, all those little red dots, is that how many fire hydrants we have?
That is correct. I don't think
What is the number?
Well, nobody is on that map there, but I actually don't see the number. I do not remember. And counting them would be the
150.
opposite of what a GIS had to click a button, it would tell me. But I don't even want to guess.
Your homework, when you come back next time, give me a number.
You should be able to ask the fire department, because they probably have that number memorized.
There's a lot really close together in some places.
I didn't realize we had so many fire hydrants.
Yeah, there's some that are close together, and there's some areas where they're kind of spread.
Like Water Street
far
there,
apart.
look at all this on
Stuart,
Water Street.
have you ever looked at the GIS street light thing that Delmarva has for the ones that they rent or?
Well, the streetlights are a combination of the ones that Delmarva has, but also the ones that the city has.
Right.
And then there's private ones that are on
Right.
private property. So I never have actually seen the Delmarva database. At the time, we didn't have the time for the student project to try to
Right.
get that data from them, but that would be something if you.
Well, I'm
were
not
to help
suggesting,
us.
it has some glitches in it, we think, because we've kept an actual thing by poll number since like circa 1978, but that's really that's really good, because one of the things that we have trouble with is if someone says, hey, I got a light out in front of my house. What's the pole number? Or whose pole is it? Or whose light is it even? So,
Well, this was a student project, so, Carol, if you know Carol Wagner and her husband, John.
Yeah.
Of course, John was involved in the project because Carol made John drive her around town to map all the streetlights. But it's something that we did as a comprehensive, we would come and talk to the stakeholders and really try to make sure we have everything.
like to blend it,
That's
make
correct.
sure we
That's
get
correct.
all the information.
Yeah, and it's actually I know, I just actually met your police chief who's here, but he's probably familiar with the strategy called crime prevention through environmental design. And certainly lighting is a very important part of that.
Right.
There might be areas of town where the chief has seen slightly higher rates of crime, where additional lighting might be of use. Criminals don't like the light, usually.
There's one other factor too, is as some of these lights get old, they're down to 20% efficiency. Sodium, when it's 3 years old, it's near the end of its life, and it's not.
Well, with our GoCap grant, we actually did this crime prevention through environmental design study in 6 other cities. Fortunately, Chestertown doesn't have the crime rate as Salisbury or some other places around the state. But we were looking at the time at trying to purchase a light meter that you can actually, it's about $5,000. We didn't have the money to do it, so we didn't buy it. But you can put it on your vehicle and you can just drive through town and it records the light intensity, and then every time it takes a reading, it gets a GPS. And what you're able to build that is this sort of density light map of the entire town. That would sense if you had a particular light that was at a lower output, it would advise you that it needs to be replaced with a new bulb. So.
Cool, it's really neat.
Do any of these maps live in like some type of omnibus package, or because all these maps are really important, but I mean, do we have access to all of them in just one spot?
Well, the projects that we've done where we work directly with the town, Case has access to the files.
Okay.
But we have not created a enterprise GIS system for the town that would take all the various data layers that we've created or that exist freely to focus on the town. I mean, that's something we'd certainly be willing to do. We do run these enterprise web applications for the state, and we've created a version of that we're using locally, but we've never done that for the town. The data can tend to get scattered.
Right.
We have a 7 terabyte hard drive at the lab, and about 7 folders that say Chestertown this, Chestertown that,
Because I think that would be a really good first initial step to take, just gather all that information. And in fact, I mean, we have a convenient tab on our website now for maps.
Gorgeous.
And I think, a lot of these maps would, just from an informational perspective, would live well on that section of the website. So, I think working closely with your students who have obviously put a lot of hours in already is great, but let's gather all the information first, make it live on our website, and hopefully that will generate some interest as well, too. And we can monitor to see how many people are actually engaging with these maps also.
Well, that would be certainly something that we'd love to do for the town. So.
Great.
I'll point up my interest in fire hydrants.
Sure.
If your house is within a certain amount of feet, you get a reduction in your insurance
Mine-
rate. I know, because I
Hydrants
pasted
on my
off one
property.
time so I could get it. So anybody that happens to have a homeowner, find the hydrant near your house and you might get a rebate.
Well, you certainly want to mention to your insurance about that.
Right.
I'm not sure what that distance is myself, though.
That's what those fake ones are for, that you.
One in
Right
the
in front
dog
of-
park.
Yeah, dog proof.
Well, I'd want to explore this a little bit further in terms of potentially collaborating, and you've mentioned a lot of grants in your presentation. Anything
We're big
that
on grants at the
we...
GIS lab, so.
Pardon?
Said we're big on grants at the GIS.
Perfect. And I mean, any type of resource that we have access to really does go a long way. So I want to explore this relationship further. And a lot of the stuff that he presented would fit very well on the website as well. So it's a natural, I think, marriage. So I definitely want to sit down and go over it for sure, especially some of the things that you want to do for Chestertown moving forward. Especially stormwater. I know that's an interest of our environmental committee. Chris, that was something that you were really big on too, so.
Yeah, that's a really good one because the NIFWIF, has funding for that right
Right,
now.
yeah.
And Chestertown is located in one of the high priority watersheds that they're specifically targeting. So I think that, partnering also, most likely with the Chester River Association as a partner, would be a really great thing to do for the towns.
You know me and impervious surfaces.
I think that's a good relationship. I think we've got Case and I writing a lot of grants, and if any of these programs have someone who can write, I'm not saying the Riverkeeper has to write the grants or CES or whatever, anybody that could help us push it with initial grant writing or anything just to give us a stimulus would help us, because we're writing all sorts of grants for the marina right now.
Yeah. Well, the TA provider grant, the way that works is that Washington College would apply for the grant, Washington College would get the money, the town would give us a letter of support saying they wanted the services, and then we would supply the services to the town. So that particular grant, the town wouldn't have anything to do with the management of the grant. Really all to do is write a nice letter of support, and then we would apply for the
We
funding.
really like those kinds of grants.
Yeah.
That's the one that,
Management is.
that's the one that did the initial tree study and.
No, that's a different one. That was the Chesapeake Bay Trust that did the initial tree study.
Right, but similar to that in form.
Similar, yeah, because for the tree study, the town, we actually got the grant, we did the work for you, and the town didn't have to, do any of the grant paperwork or anything like that at all.
Yeah,
So-
it's good.
And yeah, I mean, any way that we can support your operation as well. I mean, clearly you're a small economic engine here with 70 employees. I mean, you would be hard pressed to find a major employer like that in Chestertown. So, if we are presenting opportunities for you in terms of projects that you're working on, can you then use that to, I guess, get more business by working with other towns and potentially grow your operation?
Yeah, I mean, we took the original work we did in Chestertown, we've done work in Easton and Cambridge. We're looking at doing some updated canopy mapping for the town of Centerville. So it's a great opportunity for my students to gain experiential learning opportunities that they can take on to future careers in this industry. So having this sort of local projects for the students to work on is really part of our mission at Washington College.
Are these 70 full-time employees, or are these?
Well, we technically we would have, I think right now we're about 13 or 14 full-time professional staff, and then the rest are all students. And our student numbers vary. In the summertime, we actually, I think last summer we had 28 full-time students. So our full-time equivalent was 43 people. So coming by the lab in the summertime is the best. And I would encourage any of the council members to tour our lab. If you haven't been there, if you come in the morning at 8:30 a.m., there'll be less students there. But if you come on a Thursday or Friday afternoon, students are there. You can take a tour of the lab and really show you firsthand what we're doing. And I'll give you my card and encourage you to just send me an email when you want to come by. Sam, you already know where we're at, but
Thank you.
there you go. I think you know where we're at.
Thank you.
But
I do.
Thank you.
I think everything you do is just really innovative, and you interact with the community in ways that we don't even know that are available to us. And I think it should be symbiotic, so that when you help us, we help you. So not everything's going to be free, and some of this stuff you develop with your own resources, so it's not really public yet.
Yeah, well, it's really part of the mission. We're part of the Center for Environment Society. It's really part of the mission of the center to work closely with the community to assist wherever we can. And I think, like I said, it really gives our students the chance to do work that community members and governments and so forth is needed, so they know they're not just doing sort of make-up kind of work. People actually care about the products that they're producing. So.
Well, thank you very much. It's
All
a
right,
really
thank you.
neat service.
See if I
that
can
you guys
close
do.
out of this here.
Yeah, I went through that same transition when I got my Windows 8
I hate my
laptop, so
Windows 8.
still
Tell you
haven't
what,
gotten used to
I'll
it.
go, well, I'll just go walk away.
It just
Thank you.
There's an example.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is our police report. Chief Adrian Baker.
If you need help, I'll try again.
Physically, please. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'd like to present this evening the 2014 annual report, and then we'll Also present January's monthly statistics. And I'm shooting for under 200 words. Sentimentally, we have a picture of the current police station on the cover. I'll take bets on what next year's cover will look like. So we have calls for service, and I included a much larger span there. I think it's like at least 15 years. Our current stats for this year, 2014, were 5,820. And I'll point out that beginning this year, we separated patrol checks from calls for service.
Yeah.
And so that's what makes that look different. I would also venture to say, although I haven't confirmed it, if you look down to 2004 and that block there, probably that's the way it was done then, and then it probably changed and they were combined when those bars are almost double.
Oh, so what does that mean? You separated? So if you just happen to be out on patrol and you see something and you look, that doesn't count as a call for service?
A patrol check is if we have complaints or concerns in a particular area or business or something, and we say, like, we want to check it 3 times today. And so it's a predetermined check, which is really not appropriate as a call for service.
So you think that's what, I mean, I was wondering about these massive jumps.
Yep, I think it was, you know, and things change in different.
But even if it's separated, we still have trended downward pretty significantly from,
It's
2004.
Yes.
which is good in my book. Okay.
And then the next page is just graphing the same information. Our adult arrests were 160, and that's a decrease of 33% from last year. And, you know, for what it's worth, we never take credit for the way crime goes. There are so many factors. But
Right.
in general, this is like good to have the decreasing trend. So I'm actually very pleased with the stats. Of the 160 arrests, there were 345 separate charges. And in order, they were led by assaults, then CDS, and then we actually had quite a few for other agencies. As Councilman Gross and I reiterated that in the email today, that's like if Queen Anne Sheriff has a warrant and then we see that person of interest and arrest them, that's considered for other agency, and then followed by theft and traffic. Juvenile arrests were 12 with 14 separate charges. We have 21 civil citations, and the most popular civil citation was an open container followed closely by noise violations. We had 10 DWI arrests. Our CDS arrests were 35. That does not include those that were made by the task force. Traffic was 297, and our warnings were 2,026. And then this is significant data here, I believe also, our Part 1 and Part 2 crime.
Do you think our population is sobering up, or are they just not driving as much?
I do truly believe that, I think it's just an awareness of having a sober chauffeur and, you know, public pressure and those sort of things, which is being.
Yeah, well, and we don't have near the bars we used to.
And we don't have the opportunity, but I think it is a conscious decision made by the public, and certainly we appreciate that. So our Part 1 crimes were 111, and that is the lowest we've had since 2000. We cleared 44, and that gave us about a 40% solvability rate. Our Part 2 crimes were the lowest we've had in 15 years. Of those 142, 113 were cleared, and that was an 80% solvability rate. So it's a really good statistic. Next page just breaks them down for the total. The juvenile charges are broken down by charge. And then this next page is the task force statistics, which we have an officer who's full-time assigned to that. Next page is our photo enforcement program, and it shows by month. Typically the summer is the busiest, as you see it climb as the summer goes on. And for the record, the average monthly violations were 385. And then lastly, just our stats on our K9 operation, which we have 2, K9 Henzo and K9 Gator. questions?
I'd like to hear a little bit more from you, Chief.
Mhm.
So we've got a lot of statistics here,
Yes, ma'am.
but it doesn't, I'd like to hear more from you about, trends. You've touched on them a little bit. What do you see as, needs for the department, where you think you're heading, your staff strengths, in a report rather than just all of these statistics. So, I don't know, I've caught you on the spot, but.
Kind of a state of the state.
Yeah, a little bit more insight than just what the bare statistics show us about the department vis-à-vis the town and, maybe another
I can
time.
comment on that right now, or I'd be happy to present you with a report, whatever you would prefer.
Anybody else? I'd like to hear a little bit more about, for example, planning for the move to the new station, if you feel we're adequately staffed.
If I wing it real quick, and I only have about 80
I
words
know.
left.
You saved him.
And so, let's see,
Yeah.
starting with trends, and you hear it, and it's actually an initiative of the governor, the heroin concern, an epidemic, if you will. It is also present in Chestertown, and the greatest difficulty is beyond the drug use itself and all the peripheral crime that it creates. The burglaries and the assaults and those sort of things, which you can understand how that's associated. With regard, you mentioned staffing, I think it was in an interview with the Spy, and I'll reiterate it, some time ago. The question was generally, after you've been here for about 3 years, what kind of surprised you or whatever. And that is with regard to staffing. I thought that it would be the norm for our staff of 13 officers to be fully staffed. But in fact, I found that the norm is to be understaffed by virtue of injuries, which unfortunately we've had quite a few. In fact, in this 2014 report, although it's not reflected, there were there were literally 4 months where we were down 4 officers. That's
Wow.
significant in a force of 13. As far as staffing, I would say 13 is just adequate, and we rarely have 13. So it would be of interest to have another officer or two in the future. With regard to the police station, the new police station, 601 High Street, we've done quite a few minor things, changed the locks, made contacts with all the maintenance people, like the heating people, and figured out how to get snow off the parking lot with the town crew, and thank them very much for the good job that they've been doing for us there. And we're moving forward in our plan to occupy the building or within about the next couple weeks. The upstairs will be vacated. The plan is for the police to occupy the upstairs first. And when the daycare is ready to leave, which we don't have a clear date on that yet, then we will renovate the downstairs. The first thing we need to do is expand the parking lot a little bit. We have my artistic rendition of that, so it's not engineer quality, but I can tell you what I think we need to do, and I've been discussing that with Bill, and we can get that in a more formal sense. The occupation of the upstairs is going to be a relatively simple task. I want to create a lobby, put in a doorway so that the general public doesn't have access to the police interior quarters, which we'd be mandated to restrict that, and throw in a couple cameras, and then we have some kind of structural backbone type things, like phone system, computers, and that sort of thing that we have to get squared away. In the optimistic time frame, I would like to think that could be done May or June, something like that. And then, like I said, depending upon when the daycare evacuates, then we'll get on to step 2. And quite frankly, the sooner we get out of the building that we're in, then that has, whatever potential it may present. And as well, we need to address some future renovations in the next upcoming budget.
Thank
When
you.
you say occupy the building now, that doesn't mean you're completely leaving your old building?
No, sir, I mean completely.
You'll be out of that building?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right.
So what have been some major accomplishments for the past year?
I would say, not taking credit totally for it, but I am pleased with the crime.
Sure.
Reduction in crime. I have attended many community functions, and I guess the most recent I can think of is the Samaritan Group, trying to make that connection with the community as far as the police and what we can do to better the community. And that particular topic was the homeless, that we have a handful of that seems to come in and out of our spotlight, and how we can make sure that we're on the same page with them. We did get a second canine, which I'm very pleased to say is productive. And that last year was the first year that we had him. We hired, although we lost 2 officers, we hired two officers, two young officers, and I'm very pleased that they're progressing along as they get to know the community and get to know their job. They're fitting in well. The police station, as we've discussed, is a great accomplishment, and again, I thank Mr. Ingersoll for all his help and the committee that spent just about a year researching the options that we had, and I think making ultimately a very good choice. So I was very fortunate to do that. So those are some things.
I think police work is funny in that if you do a good job and you suppress crime and you don't have a lot of crime, then people don't get particularly thrilled with the police department. It's only when you're having a whole bunch of bad things going on that they fall in love with it. So I think your biggest accomplishment this year, it's been the lower crime rate for the Chestertown area. And I also know that, and you know that I know that we don't have as many young people, and young people are the ones who commit crimes. I mean, you don't have too many 65-year-old people out holding up a 7-Eleven or something. So, but I do think that the police department is doing a good job in that point that we're having less calls for service and we're having less major crimes. And you can pat yourself on the back for that, I think.
Well, I would give that accolade to the men and women that are actually doing that every day, and that's the officers that work for us. So I appreciate that. Thank you on everything.
Does this live online anywhere?
It does not, no, sir.
Okay. Can we get it posted?
Yeah.
I suppose we could, sure.
I'll put it up tomorrow.
And I might add that I'm meeting with Francois Thursday.
Good.
So we'll see if we can get into minor wages with
Nice.
with the police department.
Good.
Okay?
Thank you, and
Thank
thank
you.
all of the officers.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, next we have the town manager's report. Bill Ingersoll.
I'm going to cut my report by 50%. The corrected mapping errors on the zoning map, was expected to have that before you. Apparently, it's at the publisher. What Cases found over the last couple of years is their mapping, where we colored the wrong thing. He took it to the planning commission, showed them that that's what they meant to do 3 years ago was X and Y was on the map. So there's 2 or 3 of them that are coming, so we'll sign a new map. It comes from the planning commission, but it's not here tonight. So we'll just pass on that until next meeting, but that's what you can expect. And I have here Dr. Benjamin and Muriel Cole. Are you ready to go?
Yes, sir.
Please come forward.
We have a second highlight in addition to the...
Yeah, right, exactly.
I'm Muriel Cole, and this is Wayne Benjamin, head of the medical staff at the Shore Medical Center of Chestertown. We're both board members of Homeports, which, as you all probably know, is a seniors organization. But Dr. Benjamin's recommendation and idea is that all of us need to be healthy regardless of our age. And this year, we're very pleased to be able to put on a health fair for the whole community on April 2nd. Here, Liz, these are cards. You can each take one of those. It announces it. This is going to be at the middle school. It's during the school vacation break, a Thursday. The hospital is going to provide free health screenings of various kinds for osteoporosis, diabetes, body mass index, lung capacity. We're going to have 50 or 60 exhibitors showing the whole gym will be filled with people with various community resources, products, local services. And also significantly, we're going to have 10 free talks, I think about 10, by local physicians that Dr. Benjamin has recruited to come in and talk. It's all free, giving short presentations and questions and answers on heart health, diabetes, Alzheimer's, depression, pain management, colon cancer screening. Nothing like this has been done, certainly to this extent in Chestertown, at least in my memory. We are going to provide transportation to and from the senior center, and conjunctively we'll have a 2-hour workshop, which there will be a $35 registration fee for, called Living a Good Life, for seniors who, and for anybody of any age who wants to develop their own personal master aging plan. We have experts coming in to talk about that. They were here last March, and by popular demand, they're back, and this will be a hands-on workshop for people to sit down and really talk about their future and how they want to live a good life. We are a medically underserved area, and we really have, our motivation is that we want all people to be able to take advantage of this. And we want to attract a lot of people. And what we would like to do is provide some incentives for people to come, in addition to being able to, come and get information. We have raised almost $7,000 to cover the expenses for publicity, graphics. We have a paid event planner. We would ask the town if you could be a sponsor of this as well. And that is, would be a bronze sponsor is $250, and what we would do with that money, we would like to provide free snacks in the morning, free coffee to people, and it would be recognized, acknowledged that the town of Chestertown was a supporter and sponsor of this. And we're also going to the County Commissioners, which we were going to do this evening, but they canceled their meeting.
Yes,
You didn't want to. But we are going to be asking for their support as well. So, and we would like to have the mayor be an example here to show everyone what a free health screening would entail. So
what do I have to do?
Colonoscopy. Oh, sorry.
I don't think anyone wants to see
No
that.
sedation.
What, Katie Couric did it on national TV?
Or a prostate examination.
One of the tests we're going to allow people to do at the health fair is a pulmonary function test, a vital capacity kind of thing. And it's a simple thing. Prints out your reports on a printer. But it requires nothing more than blowing into this tube here and through this machine. You have about 3 trials to do it, and they pick your best one, and they give you your data and try to tell you whether you have respiratory problems or not. So that might be some advantage. So we thought maybe you could be an example.
It's a breathalyzer.
I'm not going to enter all your data in here because it requires quite a bit of time.
Take a deep breath, Chris.
You're not trying to trick me into breathing into a breathalyzer.
Your wife can pick you up really if it turns out
I
bad.
just took this out of the wrapper. So if you could just let them see you blowing into here as hard as you can.
Take a deep breath,
For
Chris.
how long? As long as I can.
Well, every bit of air in your lungs has to come out except that little bit that's called residual volume.
Let it loose, Chris. Breathe in, breathe
Oh, you
out.
can listen.
You huff and you puff.
Keep going, Chris, keep going, keep going.
Yeah, you did.
If you get red in the face and about black out, you did it. Good job.
We have a doctor in the house.
Thank you very much.
Wow.
It is going to get
For
the results, right?
$9.95, he'll give you the results.
Gives you a pretty good buzz if you blow hard.
We'd like to put the results on the screen.
do you have any questions about the event or anything that you?
Can we act on the
suggestions?
sponsorship right now?
Yeah, they kept it
250.
under 300 on purpose. We discussed this, and I think it's a good idea to be in it somehow.
I do too. I think we need to show leadership on this very serious
I
issue.
tried to hook her on the, free publicity, the cameras and all that, but that wasn't enough for Muriel. Had to go for the
This
ring.
wasn't my idea to do the,
Oh, it was Liz's idea, so Liz, why don't you make the motion?
I didn't get ready.
That's what she said.
You mentioned the county, have they kicked in yet?
we were going to ask them tonight, yes. Yeah, I have.
Oh, that's right, they
discussions with them,
canceled their
yes,
meeting.
but
What a
they-
bunch of
yes.
horses
Because it
they are.
snowed this
I believe
morning.
they will. I'm pretty, I'm
think
confident they will.
I think we can afford 250.
I think
so.
So do we
250.
need a motion?
Yeah.
Would someone like to make a motion to support the health fair?
I move that we make a donation of $250 to Homeports to support the community health fair and workshop at Kent County Middle School.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we unanimously endorse.
Decided something.
You're welcome. Thank you, guys. Thanks for your patience.
Thank you.
That's all my report right there.
All right. That brings us to the mayor's report. First order of business is we've had a vacancy on the planning commission for a while now. Technically, we didn't, but with the passing of Bill Watson, we did, but he hadn't been attending meetings for a while, so they've essentially been operating a member down for several months, so we have a resume. This gentleman, his name is Darrell Craig. He comes highly recommended by Case Des Moines. He will be a little bit of a different member if we choose to fill the position with this person, that he has a pretty extensive background as a developer. Sometimes I think that's a good thing. And then we already have a couple of very conservation-minded folks on the commission, and sometimes it's nice to have a developer's perspective, so.
He'll know all the tricks that
He will know all the
developers
tricks.
make.
For those of you who don't know him, he was here the other night when we had the presentation about the park, the art in the park. He and his wife live right next door. They were in favor of it. So you
They're the
remember-
ones that said it'll be in their front yard?
Yep.
He's the one who said, I'm so excited about
That was
this.
Darrell Craig. He's a
Yeah.
really nice gentleman.
So I would like to officially nominate Darrell Craig to the planning commission, and I don't know if we need a motion to,
Usually we nominate at the first meeting and then
Okay.
approve the second meeting, but
Okay,
you
that's
can do
fine.
it all at once if that's. what
Does
you
the planning
prefer.
commission have a meeting before we do?
We have a planning commission meeting tomorrow night.
not that I'm aware of.
When do you meet again?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Seems like we
Has he
should,
been coming?
No, no.
seems like we should fill the position then.
I would like to.
Well, I move that we accept this nomination and appoint
Yeah, they've
Darrell.
already been down for a number of
been down
meetings.
for a
We'll
while.
just go ahead and rush it
All
up.
right, well, there's a motion to accept the nomination of Darrell Craig. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
All right.
Any opposed? Okay. I'm gonna skip to
So
C,
you're gonna let him know
the
for tomorrow?
I-sign update. I've been emailing with both Nancy McGuire and the gentleman who I believe is the CEO of the Four Winds Interactive Sign Company. We had hoped that, I thought we were gonna be able to get him to personally come to our meeting on March 2nd. It turns out that he's based in Denver, Colorado, so it was a little bit of a misunderstanding on my end. But he would like to make a virtual presentation to us in, I can't remember what they called it, like a
Skype?
a call-in type of meeting where he's narrating a PowerPoint live with us.
Webinar.
What's that?
A webinar.
Kind of like a webinar. They called it something else.
Go-to meeting.
A go-to meeting.
Oh,
He wants to have a
go-to.
go-to meeting. Do we have go-to meeting capabilities here? Because I've seen some.
We didn't right up
stuff.
until this minute, but we will try to have that.
All right, well, we'll work on setting up a go-to
Bill,
meeting, and so
let me
he's
know once I
gonna
have
basically give us about a 20-minute
I can get it.
presentation on what that company is capable of providing us, and we can ask, theoretically anyway, if all goes well, we can ask questions. And then I think after that, we should make a decision I don't think we should make a decision right after he talks, but maybe the following meeting. We should decide, are we willing to back this financially to reconstitute the I-sign? If we're not, then I think we're done with it and the sign reverts back to DCA and we can help them remove the sign from that location, which I think everybody's on board. If we are interested in allocating some funding to reconstitute the sign, then I think the ball goes into the court of both DCA and the county to see if they will match a 1/3 funding opportunity. Anyway, by the end of March, I'd like to have a decision on, are we interested in helping to pay to get this thing back up? And if we are, where should it go?
Well, I had a suggestion from, she's not in my ward, but it was a good suggestion. I passed it on to Nancy, and I think she passed it on to Barbara, to put it right out here in front of the building, under the cover. It's outside, but it's under cover. And I'm just making that I'm passing
Okay.
along that suggestion.
It's a good idea.
It
Interesting
would be
idea.
protected by the, like the
That
porch.
was
out
brought
here.
up originally, and they shot it down, so.
Well, I'm just throwing it out.
I think that's a good suggestion. So why don't we, I think the path going forward is our sort of our last informational gathering opportunity will be on March 2nd, assuming we can get the technology to work. The gentleman will talk to us. We can ask him how his sign is different from stuff you can get on an iPhone, for example, and ask more details about the money. And then hopefully at our second meeting in March, we can make some decisions and start actually doing something.
It would be nice if we could have his PowerPoint
I think he can. make
ahead of
that.
time,
That's a good point.
so that we have a chance to have questions prepared.
That's a good
You know,
idea.
if we're not going to actually see him in person.
We're gonna see something more than just hear from him, though. Right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, he'll be narrating a PowerPoint, like a promotional PowerPoint about his company. Okay, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to pull this off. So the Chestertown Marina, I'll just say that Case and Bill and I have really been meeting with just about anybody and everybody who could possibly give us any kind of funding for this, including probably the most productive meeting we've had recently was with the U.S. Department of Agriculture. They have a lot of grant opportunities for basically economic development programs in rural areas, and there are a lot of facets of the marina that was very appealing to them. We didn't come to any concrete solutions to anything, but there are a
You
lot
said
of
agriculture, right?
U.S. Department of Agriculture. The bottom line is they really, really want to help us with the marina initiative. They have several different programs that we are exploring where we might apply for grants. They might have some low-interest, long-term, like 40-year loans that they could give us to match their own grants, where our payments would be nominal. And so it was one of the first meetings where I really felt like the grantor was really invested in helping us get funding. Whereas a lot of times, usually it's the other way around. We're kind of trying to be the creative ones, and the grantor was like, it doesn't really fit. They were the opposite. They were like, here's what you can do to fit in this shell. Here's what you can do to fit in this thing. So that was a very productive meeting. And we'll keep you updated as things progress there. We also, if you recall, had hired a graphic. We agreed to fund a group called Locust Grove Studios to make artistic renderings of the engineering plan that we had from our charrettes. And so I finally have these. I'm going to try to put them on this television screen, and I can't promise anything. But I have the images right here, Bill.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. We should be able to just jump into there. But if we don't, I'll just kind of go over what we've got.
The building on the left, Chris, this is gonna be a new.
Yes, yeah, I'll kind of narrate these. There's 8 images. I've got little zip drives of all these images on this little disc for you guys.
you're just so up to date, Chris.
What's that?
You're just so up to date.
I try.
There, it just splashed on there.
Did it?
Mhm. There it is.
Good, that's the file. So we need to get out of that. See, this is why the go-to meeting is scary for me.
It's just go to and you log on.
Well,
That's it, the red.
quite
That's all
that
we
simple.
do.
You know, you gotta get the audio, you gotta get the, he's gotta have
It's
control.
on your,
I know, we use it at work. I use,
File and go to the thumb drive or
probably E drive or
open.
Fish whistle's looking really good.
It's
Much better than it really did.
Hit computer and let's go to.
Sorry, this mouse.
You can get Sam over here.
I'm gonna get a spill of the heat shuts
Have
off.
this thumb drive.
Feet are cold.
Sam, you help?
Here comes the
I
cavalry.
even have the thumb drive in it.
Doesn't matter which way, when you put
They're
it
getting
in.
close to it.
What,
Where's the, you need to go to that file
Oh, well,
folder.
he put it in the wrong place.
Put it, go into the file
That's why the
folder.
go-to meeting is so scary.
No, no, it
Can't even put
doesn't
those
matter
guys
which
in the
one
right
you put it in.
I could learn it.
Sure?
Well, but you need to go to the file folder, which is the directories.
automatically.
Well, we needed to figure out how to close out of the first thing.
Well,
Doesn't matter. Where's the mouse?
Usually when the heat goes off here, it's off. It means we've run out of gas.
No?
Our company, who will
Are you
go
seeing something I'm not
unnamed,
seeing?
is not very good at filling us up regularly.
No, the one to the left of that.
You're on automatic fill up.
No, I think the heat's, I mean, I check it to make sure it's been filled frequently enough.
you said this wasn't it, Chris? This,
It should be a PDF. That's somebody
It's not
else's
it.
stuff.
Let's do it.
You got a nice fire going on. Got that gas log.
No. I know my car's cold by now. Michael's sailing in the St. Martin's Raceway.
You know, if you got us a left now, you still get your money.
So,
I can just go over these two.
just on the,
Not be worried.
Look, he's moving that thumb drive back to the side I had it on.
no, it came up, and,
That's what I like.
and it's not in one of
There's
these
a thing on
folders.
it that said, "Hey,
That was
not
not
stuff." So I put it
Where
Well, I
in.
mean, this is your
files?
flash,
Oh, maybe it's not, didn't come off my computer.
oh dear.
maybe,
All right, let's just go forward with the hard copies. I'll try to hold these up like this.
Well, I could send it from my computer to that.
It's not, it's fine. All right, does everybody have their hard copies?
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be in the same order. I'll start with this sort of aerial view of the whole facility. So if you look at this aerial view, you're looking from Front Street towards the river. Okay, so Front Street's, the north side of Front Street's at your back. This pocket park where those copper-colored scooters are is right now where the giant green shed currently stands. The white building you see on the left here is what we're calling the Chestertown Marina Interpretive Center. It will be a multi-purpose building that will essentially replace the current marina store. It will also have interpretive displays about the town's history and culture. It'll have bathroom and shower facilities for transient boaters and potentially bathrooms for the public. And we also envision a retail component. It will need to be a marine-related retail component. Ideally, that would be like a kayak outfitter, for example. We envision it currently as a 2-story building, and the idea is that the second floor would be a large open space that could be rentable by local organizations for meetings, for retreats, maybe for cocktail hour or whatever. And then you see some deck space there where you could go outside and look out and have spectacular views of the river. You can notice the entire parking lot here is pervious pavers. Those that should make you very happy.
I'm glad to hear that.
Partially for stormwater control, partially because it'll look really nice. So let's go to the second rendering, which is kind of the horizontal view, which is more of a sort of a street level view of the same area. So right now you're looking directly at that pocket park and the Wilmore Park side entrance. So you can see that pocket park has a lot of native grasses, a public art piece in the middle on this
Sorry,
case.
what Wilmer Park side entrance?
The entrance that's closer to Wilmore Park.
But this, you have the townhouse at Scotts Point.
Yeah, I'm just trying to orient you. It's the entrance to the
Oh,
right-hand
I thought you said
side.
there was an entrance in this picture, okay.
No, sorry.
Okay.
So here you're looking at a new entrance that doesn't currently exist,
Mhm.
that's adjacent to Scotts Point, where you see in the background, there's like a kayak storage area, which came directly from the charrette, maybe a little pavilion. Again, nobody should hold us strictly to this, but this is all almost directly off of the engineering plans that we have. So let's move along to the third image, which is more of a close-up view of that pocket park. That's a pretty big space. It doesn't look super impressive on the engineering drawings, but that's probably about the same size as Monument Park, for example, at least that big, right there on the middle of High Street. So maybe there's a walking trail through the middle, a place you can kind of sit near the art that's in the middle. It doesn't have to be a copper schooner or sloop, but that was just kind of an idea we wanted to throw out there. And moving right along, the fourth image, it looks like this. You're looking, again, Front Street is to your back. You're looking towards the river, towards the Fish Whistle. This is some parking in front of the new Marina Center there. Again, you can see more clearly the deck areas, the fact that it's a two-story building, etc. The fourth image here is looking, so pretend that Scotts Point condos are right behind you, and you're looking kind of upriver across the pervious paving parking area. And this is mainly to show these new parking areas for boat trailers. Those are 40-foot long parking lots, parking spaces. You can see in this image, the boat ramp is to the right, but that new ramp would be centered between the downrivermost pier and the middle pier at the Fish Whistle. Moving right along, image number 6 is kind of a more direct view. Again, Front Street is behind you in this image, looking towards the river. Closer view of the kayak storage area, the little pavilion, and the boat ramp area with associated.
So the ramp is where those white top pilings are?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where the guy in blue is?
Where the guy in the blue is standing, that's correct. These last two images are waterside views, obviously. So not that this is like the type of boat that we're wanting to attract, these long cigarette boats.
God, no.
I might talk to Joe, the artist here, about changing that out to like a nice classic Boston whaler. But this is looking kind of at the central dock that's going to be coming out from right in front of the Fish Whistle. That'll also be the fuel dock. We envision that as a floating pier. It looks kind of like a fixed pier in this image, but on our renderings for the engineering, it's floating. Again, it would extend out an additional 70 feet. But this just kind of shows you also the walkway that's in front of the Fish Whistle. We envision that as a 12-foot wide walkway as we currently have it. And then the last image is standing at the end of the downrivermost pier, which extends out just upriver from Scotts Point. You can kind of see the Scotts Point building in the far left there, and the Fish Whistle on the far right. This is the lowest downrivermost dock, looking back towards the boat ramp area and sort of the kayaking area. And those are the 8 renderings that we have. We may talk to Joe Carlick, who's the CEO of Locust Grove Studios, about another image, which is a kind of a bird's eye view from the river looking towards the property. I've talked to some individuals that might be willing to fund that with private money so that we don't have to keep anteing up. I mean, we could go to town with this and have another 10 renderings. But I feel like these are so much more attractive than the engineering drawing that we had. And already, this has been paying dividends because when we're meeting with funders now, we're showing them attractive, kind of what the vision is currently for the property. And it's been very helpful. So, do you guys have any questions about it?
Chris?
So Department of Agriculture had, I mean, I don't know exactly what you talked to them about, but do they have any suggestions for the stormwater, to divert the stormwater runoff across?
Actually, that's one of their biggest pods of funding, and absolutely, they're interested in helping us raise the grade of the property. They're helping us, they're interested in helping potentially fund the pervious paver element of this to basically turn that parking lot into a sponge. All of the green spaces that you see here, they're interested in helping on that because that slows the runoff down. Right now, that's just basically a giant gravel parking lot. We've talked to them about very intricate sort of piping systems that would divert water before it gets to the river. So yes, that will be a big part of the design. If they're involved in funding, that's a big interest of theirs.
So if it's dredged, if and when it's dredged, and then they come in with their stormwater runoff diversion, do they give you any expectations of longevity for?
What most of these
So
agencies
when
are
it'll be
telling us, in fact,
bridged
is when
again?
they do, if the state or the feds are gonna help us fund the bulkhead, for example, they wanna fund whatever they give you money towards for at least a 20-year lifespan.
That's good.
So in fact, to them, it's not even a question of should we raise the grade, they're telling us you have to raise the grade, because otherwise, we're funding something that's just gonna flood next
Be
year.
underwater.
If you don't raise it. So that again, a lot of this comes right back to our talks with the fish whistle. Like, we need to go to them now and say, not only are we gonna try to raise the grade, we have to raise the grade if we're gonna get any funding. And you need to be on board with that. So that's gonna be a conversation that we're gonna have at the end of this month with the owners. Yeah.
Chris, the only, these are wonderful, and apart from maybe in the last two images, he could replace some of those tacky looking boats. The only other comment I would have is, except for the 7th image, which is looking at the front of the fish whistle, these are all from the west.
Yeah.
And maybe one image at least that showed from the Cannon Street Pier, looking across the assemblage of the piers that will be there,
Yeah.
from a different,
Agreed.
a different direction. That would,
I'd say 2 or 3 more images would be great. It all costs money.
Yeah.
So,
a couple of these maybe are a little bit redundant, and,
Yes,
but I
agreed.
think that's missing is the view from the other side.
I agree with you totally.
The drawing that's out in, was in the lobby, I didn't look to see if it was there tonight. Do we have, or we
That's
can,
one of those,
This is one.
will we get them all that way, or not?
The second image that you have here is that image outside with the title above it.
Right, yeah, but they don't all come that way. You don't, like, I was wondering if your next presentation before the governor, you haul them in or something, so.
Yeah, here it is.
It's good.
I can pick it up on camera. Okay.
That's a great image.
Terrific.
Get myself out of it.
So I guess the next steps is we're really, right now, pushing Macron, our engineers, to give us even more of the details, the nitty-gritty details that we need, like how are we gonna connect this floating dock to this new bulkhead? How much fill do we need? And just the little things that the funders now are asking us for. And that's a meeting that's gonna happen imminently, and hopefully by the end of this month, we will really have our ducks lined up and can really make a big push for more funding, including potentially from private individuals that might have an interest in helping out if they have the means to do so. So that's kind of the plan. Just trust me when I say we are looking under every stone for funding, because this is a big, ambitious, complicated project. It's not gonna happen overnight, but I think we finally have almost all the tools that we need to make it close this year. So you guys have any more questions? Well, that's the end of my report. We're gonna go to board reports of Liz Gross.
Not much. I'd like to commend the town crew on the job they did, at least in the first ward. Shortly after lunch, I took a tour, and the streets were all clear, so thanks to them. Bill, if you would pass that on. And the only other thing I'd like to remind is that I did ask for next meeting to revisit the parking meter issue. So just remind people, if you're out and about, to collect feedback and make observations.
And that 6-month trial period is up.
Over, oh, it was over at the end of December.
Oh, okay.
No, the end of January, sorry.
Gotcha, okay.
Linda?
I will do the businesses downtown. I personally have not had a problem finding a parking place any day of the week downtown.
I have no-
Nor have I.
No,
And I will get the input from the businesses when it warms up a little bit.
Yeah. All right.
I got an email that cell phone numbers go public this month, and I have a toll-free number here if you want your cell phone number.
that's a hoax.
It is?
Oh, yeah, it's an old email hoax. It's been around for years.
All right, forget it.
They got you.
Well, it came from the college.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we get quite a bit of spam, unfortunately.
So anyway, then the Hagelin Glass is featured in the American Craft magazine. And then they have the American Craft Council show in Baltimore this weekend. I believe they're having a bus trip.
I'm going on Friday. The River Arts is running a bus on Saturday.
And that's it.
Not much to report. Bill, how many guys do we have driving the plows for the town?
CDL drivers, it's 4, I think.
4? Okay. I've always wanted to drive around in one of those, just to get it from their perspective. You know? How would I organize it? I guess next time
might be
there's
able to pull
imminent
some
weather.
I got it covered.
We've got to get a blizzard first.
Yeah.
No,
'Cause, I mean,
actually, they can pick you up right from your doorstep.
That'll be good. That'll be good. Because, I mean, you really got to commend them for being up at all hours
They
of the
usually
night.
ride 2 men in one thing, but some of them are double cab, so you could sit.
Okay.
And they keep each other awake, and they don't switch
There's
off.
only
a lot.
one in my neighborhood today, in the cab. You could have got in there.
Yeah,
You're getting
there's-
all your fantasies. You're going to be a
Yeah, I know.
fireman, you're going to be...
I know, look at that.
If you'd like to ride the trash truck too. I'm wondering about that. One of those guys looked cold the other night.
And you know what? The trash truck is coming earlier now.
Yeah,
No,
they are.
On Sunday.
When
gotta
it's
get out
cold,
early.
he gets more daytime.
So you have to put your trash out by
It's-
4
it's
o'clock
been
on
really
Sunday
cold.
now.
It's
The
just
trash
all
doesn't even
about
smell.
it's all about getting perspective, you know. So I think it's something really valuable
Amen and
because
garbage.
thanking them is one thing, but actually seeing what they have to deal with
Yeah,
is
but you
another
can't
thing
say,
entirely.
"Can you do my driveway? Can you turn around, do my driveway and back?" I'd be happy to say that's
Okay.
a really good idea.
Good. But nothing major to report.
Okay, Marty?
4th Ward. Everybody in the 4th Ward is like everybody else in King County, looking for 2 things. One, to get the 2 grocery stores open, so we can have a little enjoyable. And the next is spring. This has been one rotten winter, and I think everybody's looking forward to that. And spring training starts this week, so that means it can't be too bad. And the weatherman said it was 80 degrees in Miami today, so
Lucky them.
that's
it.
Everybody pack up,
Let's
That's
go.
right.
head for Florida.
Okay, a request from the public to be on the agenda. Ms. Hanley could not make it, so that's struck from the agenda, which leads us to questions or comments from the audience.
Everyone.
Now's your chance.
Got your big chance.
Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn this meeting.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we're unanimously adjourned.
Go home and get one.
Thanks.
We need to come up with like a protocol for
I don't know where,
post
but-
on this wall.